into the telescope. Oh, no, it's the other side. The flange on one end actually goes into the camera, and the tube goes into the telescope.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That sounds like a pretty quiet evening again here.
Yeah, everybody's quiet and I'm busy.
I'm reading the newsletter to see what it is we're going to do tonight.
Ellen had a birthday Sunday. Maybe we can all wish her happy birthday.
Happy belated birthday.
You're on mute, Ellen, but happy birthday. Everybody who made it to the zoo's here.
It was a good day at the zoo, wasn't it? There were 5 of us.
It was fun.
Worked out pretty well.
Yeah, so we had Patty, Jim, Ken, Ian, and me. So
The pictures that were posted on Facebook were marvelous.
Yeah, these guys are quick editors. You encouraged me to hurry up and edit those photos.
Lesson in high ISO, believe me.
Yeah, most of mine were 12,800 ISO.
yeah,
Especially those bonobos.
and they're moving around so quickly too. It's
Low light, dark object,
fast moving.
fast moving. Yeah.
Reflections.
Reflections. Yep, that's right. We would find a good spot and then there'd be a reflection right in front of us.
Dirty glass.
Yep.
Were there a lot of people that showed up that day, besides, our camera club?
It was a
Yeah.
very, very quiet day.
Yeah.
Oh, good, good.
Ian was first in line at the gate, and Ken and I were right behind him.
James was actually next to me. I think he was there even before I was.
I was
We-
there first.
Yeah, we made up the majority of the people at the gates when the gates opened,
Yes, we did.
which worked out well because we didn't have to fight for, space at the exhibits really. So
Yeah.
Oh, it's nice because you didn't have to deal with the snow like the following week. So you guys were a week later, which was great.
yeah, it's true.
Yeah, when we were first planning the plans for the 22-23 Camera Club season, if you will. And I had suggested this, and I was thinking, well, this is going to be a winter outing. And about 4 weeks ago, we had those warmer temperatures, and I thinking, well, I guess it's going to be a spring outing. And then then we were back more to a winter outing. So animals were busy inside and not too many outside. So we just did the inside zoo, and plenty of things to keep us active, and some great things, some great shots. So
Just,
in the summertime, we tend to focus on the outdoors, and so this gave us a chance to focus on indoors. I thought it went well.
Yeah, the only cold part was the island part, the Monkey Island area. That was the only time they got pretty chilly. Bust out the hat and gloves for that.
Yeah. I'd never
Okay, Roger, you
I'd
can
never seen
start.
flying monkeys before.
Okay. I see we have Jeff Dobbs already logged in. We'll do a couple of introductions first, and then we'll let you take over after that. Okay. All right, you are on mute, but that's fine. Welcome. This is the Menomonee Falls Camera Club, and just about all of the stuff that we'll go over after Jeff Dobbs presentation is usually covered in the newsletter. That's the go-to for all the information. Are there any new members that have not been here before? I don't think so.
I don't think either, but
Yeah, okay.
I've been
Well,
busy.
then, last month, Jeff Klug and I kind of filled in when our speaker could not show up. He had some personal family issues to take care of. And this month we have flash photography presented by Jeff Dobbs, as he's a part of Mike Crivello's Camera and Imaging Center. And you can take over, Jeff. You are still currently on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. That was the hard part. Thank you, everybody, for listening to me tonight. I used to make my living selling studio lighting. Certainly not as popular as it used to be. A lot of the younger group out there shooting weddings and other things don't use flashes, and I don't necessarily agree with that, but I think flash is a great tool to have and to understand, and it's very easy if somebody tells you how to do it. And I'm ready to do a little bit of a demo. What I did was I prepared a Canon camera with a transmitter on it from ProPhoto, and I have a ProPhoto flash with me. And all I have to do, the only controls on this is auto and manual. So I'm going to put it on auto, which is synonymously the term for auto flash or TTL flash, through the lens metered flash. In any essence, it's the flash going off, hitting the subject matter, coming back to the camera, and shutting itself off simultaneously. And most events with people where they're doing flash are shot with auto flash, and it's a very easy and effective thing to do. Now, the key to the whole thing is to get the flash off the top of the camera. We used to always walk around with the flash on top of the camera. It's probably the worst place you could possibly put the flash. So now the transmitter makes it very easy for somebody to hold the flash or to put it on a light stand or to do any number of things with it. A lot of times a photographer will go to an event today and have a assistant become a moving light stand and simply hold the flash and give it a little bit of an angle. And a little bit of an angle on flash photography makes all the difference in the world. Shooting it straight on is uncomplimentary to most people, and just doesn't look great. So if you give it a little bit of an angle, you end up with a really nice flash photography. Sometimes a little bit of an angle will create a little bit of a shadow on the weak side. And what we do is just fill in with either a white card, a white piece of material, a white wall. Any number of things could fill in, and it becomes a beautiful portrait. So I'm not a super techie person, and this is pretty high-tech stuff here. But all I have to do with a very modern flash that I have is I got my brand new phone here, and I hit the ProPhoto application. So first thing it does is it will find the flash and the transmitter. And when I fire them, it'll fire when I fire the camera. And it is controlled now through the phone. And if I want to take and turn up or down the flash, and now it's in auto, so if I move around forward and back, it will compensate for that. That's not a problem. If I go outdoors and the flash is a little bit too prevalent, I can take it down by approximately 1 f-stop just by moving this over, and it'll knock down the flash portion of the exposure to give you a beautiful look. I could walk around at an event and shoot pictures at any distance and any type of automation with the camera and have total ease in use, and it's going to give me good flash pictures all the time. So the next thing you want to do is modify the flash. So anything you can do to make the flash more complementary light is always going to be beneficial. I have a number of controls on the flash. One, I can turn the head and I can make it a wider or a more narrow beam. That could be helpful if you want to cover a whole room or if you want to just do an individual. The next thing that we always think of is just turning the flash up and bouncing it off the ceiling or bouncing off a wall. That's always going to be a nicer look than if we go direct at it, which is going to be a little bit harsher. And then there's a number of ways of modifying the flash. I can take a little dome piece here and it just magnetizes to the front, and that'll soften up the light, make it more complementary for people. If I don't have a ceiling that I can use because it's too high, I can put on a little bounce piece like that, and it'll hit the light, will hit it, come direct out of it, and give a nice soft complementary light. Ultimately, if I had 2 of these and 1 transmitter, I can set them so that one is a normal exposure and the second one is, let's say, 1 f-stop less, which would create a 2-to-1 lighting ratio, which is exactly what most photographers use for studio lighting. And be it that it is in TTL or auto flash, I can move those lights around anywhere I want, and it will hold that lighting ratio. I can modify it with different things like softboxes or grids or anything like that, and it'll work automatic with that. So I am a big fan of auto flash, TTL flash, and then the other application is manual flash. I know a lot of people set manual flash, but I want you to think of all the parameters of what you need to have correct for flash to be manual. Your ISO is going to matter. The subject to flash distance is going to matter. So if that changes, you got to change. If you put a light modifier of any type on the front of the flash, you're going to have to retest it. If the f-stop changes, you're going to have to retest it. So any of those factors change, you're going to have to reshoot and retest. If you're in auto, you don't have to do any of it. You can walk around all you want. You can change the f-stop. You can use auto modes on the camera. You can do anything you want like that, and then just simply turn it up or down to your liking for how it looks complementary to you. Now, I know that was a lot of information in just a few minutes, and I think that, it would probably be good to answer any questions at this point, because what I really want to emphasize is how easy it is to do auto TTL flash versus manual flash. I know some people struggle with that. They get out their flash meters, which is not a bad idea, and they test things and do things like that. But with a modern TTL flash system, you can do things with a great deal of ease and use. Does anybody have any questions regarding any of that?
Jeff, I do. I use the MagMod system.
Yeah.
And that I bought from my Crivellos actually. But as I see the diffusers that you have used or that you showed us tonight, if you are shooting an event, what is your go-to? I wind up struggling which diffuser do I use, which is going to give me the best light. And I'm trial and error.
I think the best thing you could do at an event is walk around with a little bounce piece on it and that'll give really nice light. If I go to shoot something, and I've done this before, where I take a couple of lights with me and I do portraits, then I typically bring softboxes. And softboxes are very nice when I'm doing a portrait, but when I walk around and I just want ease in use and good complementary light, I like to use the bounce.
Jeff, what manufacturer is that bounce unit?
That's all Profoto stuff. And I didn't do that. Well, I did a little bit deliberately, but I really like Profoto stuff. I figured today, those who are professionals who are interested in using electric flash really should consider good stuff like Profoto. And it's usually worth it in longevity and such. And they do make a lot of light modifiers. Additionally to that, I could bring out the regular Profoto studio light, which is about that big, not unusually big, but certainly bigger than the regular electric flash, but they can be used in combination too today. So I could have a studio light and I could have an electric flash and use it on location to shoot portraits and set up a very convenient and easy system.
And the equipment that you're showing works just as well, whether you have a mirrorless or an older DSLR.
Absolutely correct, because most of the cameras that are mirrorless today, they did no modification to the flash systems. They're basically the same flash systems that we were using on DSLR. So there's no difference there. There is one tricky difference of a mirrorless camera trying to simulate the exposure versus a DSLR, and it doesn't know that the flash is on there. So if you're using it with flash, the screen on the camera can go very dark because it thinks you're trying to do an existing light shot. And what you do is you modify the monitor on the back so that it doesn't go dark. It gives you a decent representation so that you can actually look at it and then shoot it with flash. Did that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
I struggled with that when I was.
So your screen on the back of a mirrorless camera is meant to simulate proper exposure, not necessarily the same thing on a DSLR. You notice how you turn it up and down, the mirrorless camera gets lighter and darker as your exposure changes. So if I go to something like a 250th of a second, which is where my flash syncs at, and I'm in a relatively dark room at f8, which is a nice f-stop to shoot my flash photography by, I will hardly be able to see anything through that camera. So I have to change the monitor on it to make it brighter so that you can actually see what you're doing.
Jeff, on my mirrorless camera, my Sony mirrorless, I take out a automatic white balance and I set it up for flash.
Yeah.
And my screen will actually lighten up. I mean, it could almost be completely pitch black in there and it'll light up the room. So I'm really surprised how good my A7R5 lights up the room in that. So the flash that I use is this flash with this white canopy when I do, bands and live music at the bars and that. So I usually bounce it off the ceiling. And I have basically about a 1/2 inch, I call it rim light around here. So you get a little light in the eyes too, even though you get a nice bounce reflection off the black ceiling.
Well, that's an excellent point, Clint. And, when I look at pictures from amateur photographers and they're not used with, they don't shoot with a flash, what you get is those dark rims under the eyes, and they don't have the catch lights. So you look at portraits without catch lights, they look lifeless. And I think the catch lights and the rims under the eyes and just a little kiss of light would always make a little better picture. So when we would go outdoors, let's say with a system like this in TTL, you don't want it to look like a flash picture. You just want it to get rid of the problems of existing light. So what you want is approximately 2/3 of an f-stop less, or 1 full f-stop less, and then you shoot it outdoors and it gets rid of all the harshness of the existing light. and gives you a much nicer, more beautiful look. And it's very easy to do. Usually approximately 1 f-stop less to the flash. The existing light can still be the same.
I also use for the flash too, Jeff, I use the slow curtain instead of rear curtain or fill-in curtain, because it's nice to get that, seems like I get a better ambience lighting background if you want that type of effect.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be one of the other things I wanted to talk about is the effect of your background to your subject. So the flash will always pretty much just cover the subject properly. That's what you look for when you set up a flash, when you're using it in TTL. And you have your flash synchronization speed of your camera approximately 200th of a second. So if we drag the like the rear curtain, like you're describing, is basically you can drag the shutter to a lower level, let's say a 30th of a second, and shoot a picture of somebody outdoors, let's say in front of at night, in front of a building. And instead of the building being completely black, as you slow down your shutter speed with your rear curtain, what you'll end up with is a nice bright background balance to your subject. And again, it's just a fantastic look. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort. I keep the flash in TTL and just work with the shutter speed so that it's long enough to bleed in for the existing light. And it's kind of fun if you take a shot like that, set up on a tripod, and you have somebody patient with you, you can shoot that same picture at any number of different shutter speeds, and the subject will stay exactly the same. The only difference will be the brightness of the background. And it's really a great learning experience for people to do that. And you'll really understand a lot more about flash if you do that. A shot that I used to do when I used to shoot wedding photography, I was very young, in my 20s. I was shooting wedding photography for a while. And we would do a shot where the sun would set, and we'd set the exposure for the setting sun and just put a TTL flash on and shoot the bride and groom headshot against the setting sun. It's absolutely beautiful. And of all of the shots that I did at weddings, I know there's quite a few of those hanging over the fireplaces in people's homes, because that's the kind of thing they really treasure. And it sounds complicated, but it's not. You should all try it if you have a flash that'll do TTL or automation, and just experiment with the shutter speed in lower light and dragging it to a longer shutter speed, and look at the background change. And you'll learn so much about flash photography by doing that.
Something I've noticed is that if you play with the ISO settings, that in some situations you can really get the flash to reach a long distance when you need it to.
Yeah, I think it shocks people how far a flash can travel, even though there is always a finite amount of output. And you certainly remember the days of going to see the ice capades at the Bradley Center, and all the flashes in the stands going off. I don't think any of those people ever got a decent picture or had their flash reach all the way from the stands down to the people skating. But I've seen a powerful flash. I've used powerful flashes before at like the what do you call it? The Betty Bryn Museum, the huge ceilings there. And I could bounce the flash off the ceiling. So it's kind of a calculation of how far to the ceiling and then how far to the subject. So, you know, if it's more than about 30 feet, you usually have to start worrying a little bit about it. But, you know, as Clint knows, with the high ISO performance of something like that Sony camera, you go up to something like 800, 1600 ISO, the flash will go pretty far. Sometimes you got to worry about too much power. And, you know, a lot of times the flashes will knock down a bit, but if you're trying to do something close up, you might have to dial your ISO way down to make sure that you don't overpower it too. But Do a lot of you guys do portraits at all of people? Because what I was going to say was the modern way for, let's say, a fashion photographer to do a flash today is that we would take a TTL flash, 2 of them, set one of them normal and one to -1, which gives you a 2-to-1 lighting ratio, which is almost all color photography is done with a 2-to-1 lighting ratio. And I can then take those lights, modify them with soft boxes, umbrellas, any way I want, and move them around and put them anywhere I want, and it'll just keep that lighting ratio. It's an excellent way to shoot portraits and concentrate on your model, on your subject, on your lighting, and not have to worry about the technical part of it. The technical part is done once you set up, and then it's just all creative after that. And you just keep moving things around and looking at your subject and just keep shooting, and that ratio and that lighting will stay the same. And there's a lot of, high-end fashion photographers making lots of money in California and New York, and they're not doing anything more than that. They're not putting any more effort into it than that because it doesn't take any more effort than that.
Hey, Jeff, I got a question for you. When you use flash and you've got the camera set on auto ISO,
Yeah.
does it compensate with ISO? Or it seems like in my experience, I've seen it runs to the whatever I've got set at the top end of the range.
So if the camera's in an auto mode, let's say aperture priority and auto ISO, it'll work perfectly with auto flash. If you do it with manual flash, you have your ISO changing. It could be completely erratic and very hard to figure out because as the manual flash is trying to put out just one specific distance, the ISO is changing, so it's changing the distance. It would be very defeating to do that. So really it works with the automation in auto ISO, but doesn't work in manual with auto ISO.
I was shooting in aperture priority,
Mhm.
and it was back at Christmas, the tree behind my subjects.
Mhm.
It was perfectly exposed, but the subjects, even with the flash, were dark and noisy. And it shot at like 6,400, which is what I had at the top of the range.
What kind of flash?
Oh, shit.
But it doesn't matter that much, but I mean, how far away were you?
10 foot.
Doesn't sound right. I mean, almost any flash should cover 10 feet.
It's a
with-
Godox with a Godox remote.
I mean, almost any flash should cover that, 10 feet with, let's say, an f-stop of f8 at maybe 400 ISO at the most.
Yeah, well, the noise was the issue, and it looked like it
Yeah.
exposed for the back and never adjusted down with the ISO with the flash.
So the noise was probably from underexposure though, right?
Yeah, but that was still had the flash on.
Yeah, it doesn't add up because the flash should have definitely given you, was it in auto?
No, it was in shutter priority.
Yeah, no, I mean, shutter priority on the flash itself, was it on TTL?
Yes.
Shouldn't have done that. It should have worked at 10 feet. There should be no question that it should have worked and given you a nice covered subject matter. So if you had the opportunity and wanted to come down here and show it to me, I could probably help figure it out or determine that there's something wrong with it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Should have worked.
I've had some real good success with student senior pictures with a off-camera flash on a monopod with about a 10x12 softbox on it. And what I'll do is I'll use it on TTL mode, and I'll have the student's parent hold the flash where I direct them to hold it. The TTL keeps it all exposed correctly. I can concentrate on them moving this way, that way, and getting a little catch light in the eyes. Seems to work real well, and it's easy. It gets the parent involved. The shots turn out pretty decent.
So that's perfect. Reminds me of many years ago, the guru of wedding photography. His name was Monty Zucker, and he used to make millions of dollars shooting weddings every year. But he did seminars for other wedding photographers, And I'm pretty sure it was Monty Zucker was working with one of his, he was famous for doing a shot where he would take the flash and give it just a little bit of an angle. And the way that his assistant would determine the angle of the flash is they would look directly over the top of the flash, turn to the side until you look at somebody's face and their ear disappears. That would be the right angle then to shoot the photography by. And then Monty would take a white card, or he would even take the white shirt of a groomsman, and he'd open it up as a reflector, and he would use it as a reflector for the shot. It was absolutely fantastic stuff and made him tons of money, and he would go around on seminars and teach that all day long. And the one light portrait with a white reflector, a white wall, like I said, a groomsman shirt, is probably one of the nicest looking, most complimentary ways that you could shoot a picture. Any other questions?
So what does a system like that cost?
This one's about $1,200 with the remote and the flash itself, battery and charger, and it's very high end. I don't find it to be outrageously priced because it's very quality stuff, but I get it where not everybody's going to want to spend that amount of money. I'm not telling you you have to. There's a lot of alternatives out there, but I do like to have good quality stuff for the commercial shooters who come in the store and the high-end people who are making a living at this. I think that the high-end strobes are the way to go. A lot of my current sales on lighting are LED lights, and LED lights are just as easy as being in an existing light room and moving lights around until you like what it looks like. I think they're great for a lot of reasons, but I think people are missing the boat without using flash. And most of the reason they're not using flash is because they don't understand flash. And I used to teach a flash lighting course for UW Waukesha, and thinking of doing a hands-on one here where, besides just seeing me talk about it on the computer, you'd be able to come in the store. We did something like this a couple of years ago, and we have a couple setups with studio lighting and flashes, and actually have you come in and do it yourself, which makes a lot of sense. And once you do it, then you really realize how easy it is. And if somebody said, hey, my cousin's getting married, you want to come shoot some pictures? You could do it and be confident that you're going to get some pretty good results.
Jeff, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Is, on these flashes, I believe some flashes you can have, I think it's called modeling lighting, where it actually has the light on, like the, let's say if it's a really dark room, it can light the room up basically like a flashlight. Does that use like a certain percentage? Can you dim the light on the flash for the modeling light?
Most of them you can't dim the light on the modeling light, but that's not all of them. Sometimes the modeling light itself is actually an LED that's inside of here behind the flash tube. And so there were definitely some monolights, studio monolights that you could turn on and use as video lights. And it's becoming more and more popular because instead of using an actual modeling light, they're using an LED light, and you can turn that on. It's very low power consumption, and it's pretty effective. And so, yeah, it's going to be more and more prevalent that any kind of electric flash that you might purchase would also have a continuous light option.
Yeah, I think I seen, like it's what, 4 to 6 inches, and it's a constant light. And what I also like about that LED light, you can change the Kelvin and that, let's say from 32 to, daytime, let's say 5400.
Yeah, or you can do even more than that. They can change colors now too. It's amazing technology. I was selling LED lights in the early 2000s. Some of the panels that were 1 foot by 1 foot were $2,000. The ones that did the color temperature change were $4,000. Now we've got a little LED light I just put on myself here to light up myself because I was too dark before, and I can do any kind of color temperature change, up and down power, any kind of color with that thing, and it's $59.
So you could kind of use that almost like a substitute, if the subject is not too far behind, you could use that as your flash.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people do that now, and most of the time, I tell you, most of the photographers today are at the mercy of existing light and don't even use the LED light, which they should. It's a very convenient little LED light. You can sit up in the hot shoe of the camera, or somebody can hold it for you. And yeah, it could make all the difference in the world, just like using flash.
Now, I know they have the infrared built into the flash or sometimes in the camera too, and that it seems like I might have a little issue maybe if that's a really, really dark, almost pitch black. It has a hard time focusing on the subject, trying to pinpoint that. And then also depends on how far the subject is away too. And that, because I think after 20 feet, it has a little hard time bouncing that, infrared back to you to get a good description on how far it is.
Well, I mean, a lot of the flashes do have the autofocus illuminator built into it. So when it gets to a certain light level, and it's the kind of light levels we're talking about is where you can hardly see, and the secondary system does come on, it puts out a beam, the beam comes back to the camera and says, hey, this thing's 15 feet away, and it puts out 15 feet of light, and it focuses then on 15 feet. It is pretty effective, and it should work into virtually pitch darkness. I've seen it in a room absolutely 100% dark, and it worked proper.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Jeff, are you guys actually considering doing a hands-on class?
Yeah, we were just talking about it today. I was telling Troy that I was going to do it for you guys tonight, on the computer, and that we could set up something here in the store with a couple of flashes and then a couple of studio lights and shoot models and things like that. We're working on a couple of things right now with some classes. We haven't done much over the last couple of years, but we're going to get much more active in it. And besides Troy doing his basic classes and things here, I think I'm going to get more involved and do some stuff with lighting, which was my main source of income from 1990 to about the year 2000. And I sold millions of dollars worth of lighting. Now I'm glad I don't have to make my living selling lighting because it's not as popular as it was then. But I think that if you want to set yourself apart from other photographers, to understand lighting is the key.
How would we know when you're going to have such an event?
Well, I can certainly leave an email for Clint. I'm sure he'd let you guys all know.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We'll come up with some stuff. We want to become more proactive now that, at least I feel that COVID is, hopefully behind us. That we want to have people more here at the store, hands-on, and get some classes and other things going again.
I'd definitely be interested. I think we could get a handful of people out of this group for sure, Yeah,
it was nice because what we could do then is, we all take turns as photographers and models and just rotate back and forth, and the camaraderie and learning with others is really a great way to do it. And having us there, having the people from the store there to work with you with the technical part. But I did my lighting course, had a specific my lighting course had a very specific theme to it, which is that lighting is actually very easy to do. And I think a lot of people get caught up in trying to do things very manually with flash, and I think it gets very complicated. They get frustrated with it, and it's because nobody ever showed them how easy it is.
Something that I tried and was got a lesson on was I was doing some macro photography, and I had a studio light over the top. With lots of power, I had it cranked down to minimum power, so I knew that it could make multiple flashes. And I thought I was going to do use my camera's focus bracketing, and it turns out that when that operates, it doesn't run the flash at all. I thought it would do multiple shots as it did all of the frames, but it did not. So I had
That's
to
kind of
switch over to the
complicated.
manual to do it.
Yeah, that would be pretty complicated, wouldn't it? I mean, because in focus stacking, isn't the exposure kind of cumulative?
No, it's completely separate full images. And it's just that I believe that it uses electronic shutter. And while it's using electronic shutter, it's not connecting and disconnecting to run the flash.
Yeah, correct. I found that out the hard way, that mechanical, you need to use mechanical for flash, because I was wondering why the electronic wasn't working. It's like, my flash isn't working in that. So, and that's a problem with the newer cameras and the mirrorless. It just can't work, I guess, as of right now.
Yeah, there's got to be something technical to that of why it can't work without the conventional shutter.
That is correct.
Yeah, I don't know that they could ever quite change that. And then it would be becoming a kind of an interesting controversy between regular shutters and virtual shutters. We'll only be able to see what the future brings when it comes to that, because it seems like some manufacturers have a little different opinion of that.
Well, it's hard because there's some places, some museums or whatever that, it'd be nice to use a flash, but they don't want to hear your shutter in that, it's like, well, you
Right.
gotta use, electronic.
Yeah.
Silent mode.
Yeah,
So-
no, I get that. But there just must be some technical thing. I mean, if they could ever figure out how to do it, I'm sure they would. And then, give you a download to your firmware or something that allowed it to happen. But, you'd have to understand the technical part of it and why that needs to be. I don't know all the details, but, it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
I know for me, talking about the flash again, I know for me, when I do people shots, of the crowd and that, I use a shutter speed of 250, f-stop 8.0, because I want a good depth of field in that, because it could be one person or I could shoot 12 people in that. So I try to always keep the best range of people in focus. And then I shoot, there's just two ISO settings I have set standard. Is I usually 850 or 800 and 1250s. That's usually my two go-to lighting for ISO.
That'd be a little much, Clint, if you weren't doing like the concert thing. If everybody was maybe 10 feet away, you'd probably be better off at ISO 400 or something like that.
I agree.
Most flash pictures are done at 5, 6, or 8, and that does make sense. I mean, that's a very traditional thing from years ago, because you want the face and the body to be sharp, and yet still blur out the background when possible. So today you've got people spending thousands and thousands of dollars to have these lenses go wide open so that you can blur out the background, and yet the traditional look of a portrait is still approximately 5, 6, or 8. So I think you're right on with the f-stops there, unless you're looking for this really super shallow depth of field face shot. And yeah, you're probably right about the ISOs working for you at the distances you're shooting. But if you were shooting at, 5 to 10 feet, I think you'd be better off at ISO 400.
Yeah, I can give it a try. And that, I mean, I guess, too, in that the why I like to have a higher ISO in that, then you don't need as bright of a flash, I think, right?
Yeah, so your flash is just going to be putting out a small amount, and the smaller amount that the flash puts out, it's based on duration of the flash. So if you ever want to stop action of something extremely fast, you do it with electric flash, and you do it with low output from the flash and high ISO. So I mean, flash, is what's used when you saw the famous picture of the bullet going through the playing card. The only way you can stop action like that is with a flash. The duration of the flash could be a 5,000th of a second, let's say. It could be even less than that. But a 5,000th of a second will freeze pretty much action, and you think of a bullet, at 2/50th of a second, it's a blur, but at a 5,000th of a second, you might be able to freeze it. And there's some really fascinating stuff about early flash and stopping action. Does anybody know where the electric flash was invented? Nobody knows that, huh? Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the Milwaukee Journal. A photographer at the Milwaukee Journal invented electric flash. And his whole idea was to take the flash like a bare tube and stick it up into the corner of a room and use all of the walls and the ceiling as reflectors. And it really worked good. I mean, he could do all kinds of stuff. If he had a big room, he would use 2 flashes and just hoist them up into the corners of the room, and he could light up the whole room. You can still do that today with regular flash too. So now you guys learned something.
I like using this, I like really using this white diffuser on top of the flash, because it seems like you don't get red eye as much too in that, and you get a nice even, like a fluorescent light.
Yeah, whenever you modify in any way, you're always making a better light. What you have to look at is the subject matter. So, a lot of times we're thinking of people, in particular ladies, softer light makes a nicer, more complementary look. If you want to shoot something like a bodybuilder and have very, very contrasty lighting, well, then you don't use the modifiers. You use direct, harsh looking flash. But any way that you would modify it by shooting through something that's frosted, to shoot into something and back, or a big softbox, always makes for a much nicer looking complementary light. And it's interesting, again, when you take and you look at how we used to use electric flash and put the flash directly on top of the camera. What you have is the flash in the worst possible position and in the most harsh way that you could possibly do it. So any way we can add angles and light modifiers and other things to the flash is always going to give a more complementary look.
What I do notice is using the diffuser with people wearing glasses, it seems like I don't get such a glare, and that you can actually see the person's eye through their glasses. Do you have any tricks?
Well, that's certainly a step in the right direction. I have never removed glass from people's glasses to shoot pictures of them. You really do have to just work with the flash. I mean, the angle will help. The positioning of the flash will help. And, what you can also do is block it. If I'm shooting a picture and there's a particular glare coming from the flash, I can move my hand or I can move something in place. And as soon as I see that glare go away, I can then shoot that picture. I used to use my hat doing that at some of the golf outings I used to shoot when flare would come over the subject. In the middle of the day, all of a sudden I got flare coming in on my shot and I got to block it. So I took my hat off, moved it until all of a sudden it blocked it and then shot it. And that works pretty good.
Jeff, with my MagMod system, I also have the gels, for color temperature changing.
Yeah.
And when do you see using that? It looks like fun, but I just don't know in real application, unless I'm just being creative, when gels come into play on Flash.
So, I mean, a lot of times today people wouldn't use gels on it because you can change the color temperature yourself in a digital camera. But if you wanted to do it the traditional way, you certainly could use the gels. So you typically have daylight balancing on a flash, or electric flash can be a little under daylight. So daylight is between 4,800 Kelvin and about 6,000 Kelvin as far as color temperature goes. And if your flash is towards the lower end of that, let's say it's a little bit bluish looking, and you warm it up with a slight warming gel, if it gives you the color that you want, then you're good. You can do any number of things with a digital camera. You can do a custom white balance. You can do a custom white balance and then add warmth to it, which would be real similar to just using the gel. I suppose there's too many ways to do that, and most people today wouldn't be using the gels as much as probably just changing the color temperature on the camera.
I do know for the gel, I actually have two gels on my camera, which I don't use, but one is green and one is like an amber color. And I know, I forget which one's what, but if you're shooting in incandescent light bulbs and that, I think you use the orange one. And then I think you use the green one for like fluorescent, I think, but I could have that backwards. I forget.
No, you nailed that, Clint. I mean, that's perfect. And it actually helps the question just a moment ago, because yes, if I wanted to balance light, let's say with tungsten light on in a room, and I wanted the flash to be the same color temperature, using a gel then actually would be really good. And the green is for fluorescent. Not all fluorescents are all over the place, but they always include a green because they're assuming them to be green in nature.
Well, now you have the LED lights, which could be all over the board and that.
Yeah.
So then it's really hard because they're always changing colors too.
Well, I can change the color temperature on an LED light, well, from one end to the other, and then I can change it to any color and almost any hue. So it's unbelievable what you can achieve with an inexpensive LED light.
When I'm using the setup I had talked about earlier, I noticed that early in the setup when I was doing that the flash didn't match the background. Even outside, it was just a little bit blue. So for people in that setup, I have a gel on there all the time. It's just very, very light orange, and it's just enough to take the blue cast off their face.
Well, that's perfect, because doing it the way you did it, you took care of the situation without changing what you liked, which was the background. If I did that electronically with just the camera by changing color balance, both the subject and the background would both go up in color temperature at the same time. So you did the perfect thing by warming up the flash and changing the color temperature to accommodate the background. That worked perfect, I'm sure.
And for people, I like the more warm color instead of the daytime because they all look white and that, it's like I like nice warm color.
Well, you're right about that. If you shot a picture of somebody normal and a picture with them slightly warmer, and you asked them which one they like, they probably always pick the warmer one, because having a little bit of a healthy glow in your skin is what people typically like their looks like, with a slight suntan, right? And
Yeah.
so they always like the way they look with a little bit of warmth.
I know I did some shooting in a gym, gymnastics, and so couldn't use flash, had a higher shutter speeds. And those lights, I don't know if they were sodium or what they were, but from one shot to another, the color could change.
It probably was changing due to auto white balance. You reorient the camera with different lighting, different situations, you know, and these gyms can be all over the place too, as far as color temperature. And you reorient the camera one direction versus the other and the color changes.
Well, we had set the white balance, but
We did
apparently
set it.
the AC fluctuation in the light actually was changing the color of the light coming out of shining down on us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure of it. And so places, a lot of the venues that, you know, sports teams and in particular high schools and stuff like that, the lighting's terrible and it's all over the place. Some are real dark, some are real bright, and all kinds of different color temperatures. No consistency whatsoever.
Roger, I think what might be happening is, I know some of these LED lights and that it's the frequency. It's the frequency of the light. I know my Sony, it has a setting in there. It will balance to the light. I can have it set manual. So I could have, let's say 204.5, 205.6, you know, so it'll balance to the frequency of the light. It'll sense the frequency of the light, and also LED TVs, and that it'll sense whatever, it will calibrate what the proper exposure is to the LED lights or TVs or whatever you're shooting at.
Yeah, I'm sure it was changing due to the 60 hertz frequency. I know that for fluorescent lights, if you take some real high speed shots of a fluorescent light bulb, as it goes through that 60 hertz cycle, the color changes coming off of the bulb.
I think that's more of a problem with the mirrorless camera today than with the DSLRs with that. They call it a rolling shutter type of thing, and it's caused by fluorescent lights. I've seen it a number of times. It really causes people problems. I knew a guy that was shooting a horse show in a ring, and he kept having troubles with the pulsing of the lights.
Any more questions?
When you're out shooting a small group of people, is there a simple way to get the flash off your camera in TTL mode yourself? Are you holding a camera in one hand and the flash in the other, something like that? Or do you have another method?
Yeah, I mean, typically I do that. There's also a light stand that we have that's a self-seating light stand. So you take the flash and you put it on there and you just pick up the stand and the legs of it kind of retract. And when you punch it into the ground, they reset and you just keep doing that. But ultimately, the method of the moving human light stand is always the best. And I know a number of photographers in the area who will take one of their kids and bring them with to an event so that they can hold the light and move around for them. It's pretty easy to train somebody to get into proper position to hold the light and get you good light on your subjects doing that.
I suppose what you could do is get most of these flashes come with a, I call it a little set screw that you can mount on a tripod. So I suppose you could always buy a cheap tripod and put it whatever position you want, whatever angle, whatever height, and you can move that if you don't have an assistant with you.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the idea, but a light stand is less money than a tripod. And the light stand actually has, I mean, it's a specific light stand, but it actually has a provision in it to make it extremely easy to just pick it up, move it, and it seats itself. It's kind of interesting product, and it was meant exactly for that purpose. We did a little web thing about 2 years ago where we were showing people how it worked, and the company themselves actually saw it on YouTube and started sharing it because we had done such a good job of showing how it worked. But it's very easy to pick up the stand and move it and have it land right in the right spot without tipping over or anything like that. But you know, you always worry about breaking stuff and having it fall over. So but it was a pretty cool idea, and it does work good.
We talked so much about the side-to-side angle in doing portraits. What about the height of the flash?
Usually just a little bit higher than the subject and slightly tilted down. If you're worried about, you know, like shadows on a wall behind them, give it a little more, and then you'll hide the shadow behind the person.
Jeff, what would you recommend? Would you recommend setting the ISO, you know, let's say whether you're indoors or outdoors, set that to whatever setting you have for the environment you're shooting in? You know, let's say for outdoors, like, well, I'm not going to shoot at 4,000. I'm only going to shoot at maybe 100 and that. What would be the best way of setting that up first and then setting up your flash?
So I'm almost always, even though I use automation on the camera and automation on the flash, I almost always set regular ISO. I don't care for auto ISO. I think it's extremely confusing, and I'm not in control of what's going on. So kind of like what we were saying before, if I was shooting an event and I knew everything was going to be, you know, within 15 feet of my subject, I'd probably be right around 400 ISO. And a lot of the cameras today are negligibly quality difference between 100 and even 800 ISO. So you're not really setting ISO to get better quality from your camera anymore. If you go higher than 800, you're sacrificing maybe just a little bit of quality, but what you're doing is you're extending your range. And I know that was important for you, Clint, because you could be firing, you know, 30 feet away, but most flash photography is within 10 feet. 5 to 10 feet away. So 5 to 10 feet away, I go ISO 400. If I'm outdoors, I go ISO 100. And then balance everything based on that. But I was a film shooter for a long time before digital photography ever started. So those rules just come from my experience as a film photographer and what I would do when I was shooting something and what films I would be using. And I've never changed that when I went to digital photography. And I'm glad because the rules are the same.
Is it hard to get pretty good, decent lighting, you know, in, let's say, direct sunlight? You know, let's say you're trying to, you know, let's say take a picture of, let's say, sunrise or sunset, and then you're shooting into the sun also with the flash. And that, you know, let's say you want the subject, you know, you want the sun to be setting in the back of you. What tips do you have for shooting something like that?
Well, yeah, that's exactly what I do. So I set the exposure for the sunset, much like Ansel Adams when he shot Moonrise over Hernandez. He knew the exposure for the moon, and so he set that shot up for that exposure. So you set up the exposure for the sunset, and then the flash being on auto will cover your subject matter, and it'll end up being the best picture you ever shot of people. It's just a fantastic look. It's not hard to do, but I always have the flash a little bit under normal, about 3/4 to 1 stop under normal. Whenever I'm outdoors or whenever I'm doing a shot where I'm blending it in with existing light, I like when the flash doesn't look like a flash. I'm getting all the benefits of the flash going off, getting rid of the harshness, stopping action, all that good stuff. But it doesn't look like a flash. I don't want it to look like a flash. So I have the flash turned down approximately 1 f-stop less than what it would be for normal exposure.
Yeah, I notice that quite a lot when I do indoors. Sometimes I turn it down, minus 0.3 to minus 0.7, maybe minus 1, what you were describing, because like we said, sometimes it's just too white. It's like I'd like to have more of that nice glow effect on their face, and that instead of like, okay, this doesn't match up. It looks like daytime light in a dark environment.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the nice part about doing stuff like that is if you have somebody patient enough that will work with you a little bit, you can take them outdoors and simply shoot a series at normal, minus a third, minus 2/3, minus 1, and then look at it and go, which one did I really like the best? And I think that's a great way to do it. And then the opposite, when you're shooting flash stuff with low light behind them, is you can certainly drag the shutter speed, go down from 200th to 125th to 60 to 30 to even a 15th if you don't mind firing it off a tripod. What a wedding photographer would do to balance the group of people, let's say in the church, would be to put the camera on a tripod, have a flash fire to cover the subject, and then drag the shutter down to even 1/8 of a second to bring up the light in the church so that it looks normal. And those are beautiful shots and can only be done properly off of tripod because you're dragging the shutter to like 1/8 of a second. But you don't always have to do that much of it. But again, those are great looking shots. And if you're just trying to do this by the existing light in the room, it's nowhere going to match the quality of the shot of shooting the flash and then balancing the background to meet what the flash output. It'll be a beautifully balanced looking shot. It'll be far superior than an existing light shot.
I know when you start shooting low shutter speed, boy, it's hard because there's usually always at least one person that's moving that's blurry and that, so it's hard. I don't like to shoot too slow because like these people are moving and that,
Yeah.
someone sneezes.
You shoot a couple of them. You have to shoot a couple of them, and always look for blinkers too. I mean, sometimes people there are blinkers out there, and you got to fake them out. Then you go, okay, on 3, 1, 2, fire the camera.
I did that a couple times where I shot it on 1, and that it's like, hey, you said 3, and that, so I caught them off guard. But also too, in that some of these people, they know the flash is coming, and they know the flash is sometimes bright, so they know the flash is coming, and then he's close their eyes and that. So I've had to
they're
do that,
anticipating it. And they are closing their eyes, and certain people do that way more than other people.
And I've had to take the person. I had to shoot like 4 or 5 times in that because sometimes the same person would always have their eyes closed, and then when she finally opened it up, her other friend had her eyes closed. So it's like, oh, okay, let's redo this again and that. So I always like to check each individual.
Well, with the mirrorless camera, you actually see it during exposure. You can sometimes catch that.
Yeah, sometimes. Yep.
If not, you just shoot a few of them. If it's a bigger group, shoot even more. You got 10 people up there, shoot a half a dozen pictures just to make sure that you got something good out of one of them,
Yeah, I usually tell them it's like, hey, I'm going to probably take a couple shots and that, and sometimes maybe the first shot you might have moved, they might have moved, or combination of both. And you might be just, each one might be a little blurry and it's not as sharp as, let's say one of the other ones.
Right.
Sometimes I've had good success that if I have a high cycle rate on my flash to make like you're going to take the picture and just trip the flash, and then everybody relaxes, then you take your picture.
That's a great way to do it. Faking them out is the ultimate way to do that, because the same people who are going to be blinking and causing troubles are always the same people. And you'll know after just a few minutes who the problem is. It's always one person or 2 people.
I do know shooting in that low light too, and that boy, the people's eyes are big pupils and that big pupils.
Well, they used to try and compensate with things that would dilate your eye that were pre-flashes and things like that. That would usually freak people out. And what you'd end up with is, you know, like this shocked look on their face when the flash multi-fired like that. So, you know, years ago, event photographers would put the flash up on a bracket over the top of the camera. And that would almost always eliminate red eye and shadow issues. And not too many people do that anymore, because now you're talking an angle flash, typically held by another person or on a light stand. So you can kind of do the same thing.
Yeah, I hardly use very rarely the red eye, and I always have it off. And like I said, this little white diffuser seems to really help cut the reflection off, you know, for the red eye.
Yeah, it works pretty good. And you know, one of the few things, I'm not much of a retoucher in a computer, but if for whatever reason you got red eye, it's pretty easy to get rid of that. Anybody else?
I hope some people learned some stuff tonight.
Well, I sometimes go way too fast. You know, when I do my class, you know, with people right here in the store, a couple hours and hands-on, and I think it would even make more sense and be more beneficial. But I hope that everybody did learn something. I always try and make it that these type of things are kind of about how I would use it, but I've consulted with many photographers over 40 years now on how they're using flash and how they're doing things. And I try and draw a little bit from people that I know and people are successful, and then, you know, try and do it myself. So I think everybody should, you know, if you're interested in such things, should grab a flash and just experiment with it, and, you know, leave me an email or stop in the store or whatever, show me the results and ask me any more questions. I'd always be happy to answer.
I suppose they could always maybe email you too in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for your time and help tonight there.
You guys ever want anything else in the future, just give me a topic. I can usually blab on for quite some time.
I think that one presentation you did at the Nature Museum or whatever center, with, you know, standard or constant lighting and stuff like that, flash photography. I think there was several different ones that you strobe lighting. I guess that was pretty interesting, very interesting. A lot of people did like that.
Good.
Okay, thanks very much, Jeff. And I appreciate your time and everything. Very good information. We'll
Hey, guys, it'd be a good time to put in a plug for Crivello's. It's a great place to shop for more than just flash gear and all your major brands. Crivello's is the place to go. Hey, Jeff?
Thank you. Yeah, well, we want to be, and we feel we are local. We're just a local company. I'm not after business from around the country or the world. I'm just interested in the people who are a part of our community here, and we're always going to stay that way. And God knows we love the people here in the Milwaukee area and Wisconsin. I think if the store was anywhere else on the East Coast or West Coast where people don't give a damn, I don't think we'd be around today. But I thank everybody in the Midwest for being a little more community oriented and you know, appreciating what we bring to the table. Not too many people know, but Mike Crivello, he doesn't draw anything from the store. He keeps it here for the employees here. We are the epitome of small business, and we are here to keep this thing alive. We feel that that's very special for the people of Milwaukee to have a good camera store.
You guys do a great job. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
And, yeah. And so now I think we'll move on with the rest of our meeting. You can.
Yeah. I'm gonna probably go then.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Have a good night. And just let me know if you want me to do something in the future, and I'll let you know about classes and stuff going on here.
Okay.
All right. Good night.
Thank you
Thanks
again.
again. Good night. All right. That was pretty good. Let's see. I think that people wanted to talk about the zoo outing. It sounded like it went over pretty well. I think I heard that 5 people showed up. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah, we had Patty, Jim, Ken, Ian, and myself. And so it turned out there wasn't much of a crowd that day, given the weather. And so we were early in the gate and got shooting. And so we started out with the primates and went then up to the aquarium and reptile area and back to the aviary. And that took pretty much several hours. And then we had a bit of lunch together and talked about our experiences. But so some of the photos have been posted by, I think, most of us on the Facebook page for Camera Club. So I think at least 4 of us have posted there. And so check them out. And it was, as other folks have said, the lighting was a challenge. You know, especially in some of the areas, and some of the people got some great shots. So check it out on the Facebook page.
Okay. Thank you. And also on April 29th, is going to be an outing to Shady Lane greenhouses. I was there a couple of years ago and I was surprised that everybody talks about the flowers, but there's also some terrific model trains set up there too.
Yeah, it's not going to be the day of the Jamboree. That's maybe like the following Saturday, but the trains will be there. Sometime this week, I'm going to go out and talk with Carl and Heidi and just to let them know we're going to be coming. That they've always been very welcoming to us in the past. So this will be the same time. Well, it was just a year ago that we were there last year. So we'll see how the flowers are coming along, and there's always something good to shoot there. So we always look forward to that.
Yeah, and actually the lighting in there is kind of nice. It's not real harsh, and they don't mind you bringing in a tripod, but you kind of want to stay where if there's a lot of other customers that you're not blocking them or anything.
Yeah, it's helpful if we park around back, just to give parking spaces in the front lot to the paying customers. So if you could, they would appreciate that.
How many people use a monopod?
I occasionally do.
At the racetrack.
I wasn't quite sure if the monopod would be a little easier and better, or do you need a tripod for a little bit more sturdy, longer exposure time?
It's personal choice.
Yeah.
It really depends on how you shoot. Some of us don't use tripods at all. Some people use tripods. Just depends on your style and what you're trying to shoot.
I use a monopod a lot when I'm using a long, heavy lens. But usually for that kind of work, I'll take a tripod. Are there any other outings that are coming up? I know that there's going to be another one in, I believe, in June for the zoo. But
Real quick, I'll just mention, I put a link to the Facebook group in the chat. So if you're not part of the group and you want to be, just go there and you can click join
Okay.
and then I can approve it. You'll be in.
All right.
Roger, if I may, this isn't a club outing, but something I became aware of probably about a couple of weeks ago. And maybe somebody not on Facebook, because I put it on that page, but in this group. Young woman found out I like photography. So she told me about the multiple sclerosis walks that are throughout the state. And they are always looking for photographers. So I've signed up for a couple of them and it's just MS walks and they can never find photographers. But then with that said, I'm wondering, I've reached out to a couple different photo groups. Is there a common place for photographers that, professional or not, that just want to shoot, that nonprofits, either nonprofits can go to say, hey, we need volunteer photographers, or people like us who are professional can direct you to find out where our services could be used for a worthy cause? So if anybody, bottom line, if anybody wants information on the multiple sclerosis, the MS walks this year for Wisconsin, it's either mswalks.com or you can reach out to me because I'm going to get involved with that. But then I throw it to you guys. Is there anything out there that people know where photographers can learn where they can volunteer?
I think a lot of it is event specific. I can speak for Outreach for Hope, which is a ministry among Lutheran churches, but they do a lot of good throughout the community. And I photographed that one year. Ken Warning photographed that last year. I think they shoot about 5 different locations in southeast Wisconsin. And I know they're frequently looking for photographers. And if anybody's interested in Outreach for Hope, send me an email and I can send you some information and let the director know that you might be interested. That's Outreach for Hope, and you can check them out on the website, outreachforhope.com.
Yeah, I don't
But
know
there is-
the website that collects those types of requests. I know that there was another request for photographers for the West Bend Christmas parade.
Mm-hmm.
There is no central depository, so to speak, that I'm aware of. But could that be on the on our camera club website or would you get a lot of people who were God, I can't think right now. My mind's a flash. No, if we could put it on the website or have a little section that says these are people who might be looking for volunteer photographers, whether amateur or professional, or just want to improve. Would that be something that could be done on the general public Menomonee Falls website? Or would that be better?
We can put something on there. We get a lot of calls for stuff like this. It just generally doesn't get passed on that much because it takes so much research to make sure they're legit or not. And then a lot of times people just don't show up. It's a pretty big commitment to make sure that if you're going to do it, you got to make sure you show up. But yeah, if people want to send it, I can start a page of that. I don't know.
Well, but then would it be better to put it on our private grouping or on the public grouping? So that's all I was wondering. It might make it easy. Well, no, because then people would just start posting that they would want photographers for this, that, or another thing on the general.
They'd have to send me the information and then I'd have to verify everything and then I would post it. I wouldn't just post everything because I get emails all the time for people wanting stuff and I determine whether it should be passed on or not. And a lot of the stuff, they usually don't tell us soon enough. It's usually, well, we need a photographer in 3 weeks. Well, that's hard by the time you get passed on to the people that say, yeah, let's pass that on. 3 weeks have gone by, and that's the problem with trying to pass it on to WACO, which, would cover the whole state. But we only publicize stuff 4 times a year. And so we need to know things 2-3 months ahead, not a couple of weeks. So we could certainly do it on our website, but I'm not sure, how many people are going to go to it from our membership to use something like that.
Yeah,
Maybe we
mean,
can. I was
Thank
just
you.
gonna say, look, but we could discuss it at our board meeting in August, because
Sure.
all of a sudden it doesn't seem that far away.
Literally right
Yeah.
around the corner.
Right. And I
Yeah.
appreciate your
Yeah.
thoughts. I just think there's so many people like me. I have a full-time job. I love shooting. And if my work could be used for a nonprofit that they're looking, legitimate, MS or cancer or whatever, in your photos, you could see it and you're doing it for a reason. That's a great cause. I think there's a lot of people out there, not just in the Falls area, that would love to get involved, but there's not a central place where people can look. So I don't know, I've just grassroots idea, and I would like to kind of keep looking to see if there couldn't be a place where the organizations couldn't reach out to some central organization to say, hey, this is what's going on for this walk or whatever. So
Hey, Linnea, would you be volunteering then to head this up? It's just in case I'm just.
I don't know what, I just think it's a great idea. Yes, I want to keep pursuing it, but I don't know where it's going.
Would that be better on the WACO site, since there's a lot more camera clubs involved there than just Menomonee Falls?
Well, it would be a good spot for it. The hard problem is getting all that information and getting it to the webmaster, and then, getting it up there, getting it approved by the board to make sure it's something they want to put up there, and then, putting it on. And then the other problem is getting people to go look at it. You can have a web page, that's great, but
Right.
driving people to go look at it, that's a whole nother thing. And that's really what you need to figure out, is more how to get people to do it. It's been a constant thing. I mean, the rec department, when we were meeting at the rec department, was always looking for photographers, and we could never find anybody that would volunteer to go shoot at all the different activities that were there. It always sounds great. I mean, I wish I had time. I used to do that a lot when I had my camera store, but I don't have the time to do it these days. But if there are people interested in it, yeah, we can try to put this stuff out more. I mean, we do get stuff. We get different, photo competitions and different things that people are looking for. We just have to figure out how we want to do it and come up with a way.
Well, yeah, well, we'll have to mull it over some.
Yeah.
Speaking of photo competitions, the WACO Spring competition deadline is coming up of April 16th. And also, I believe WACO is the one sponsoring the Raptors in Focus photo shoot.
No, that's Schlitz Audubon is doing that on their own.
Are they? Okay.
That's a
not what-
Schlitz Audubon one. Yeah.
And
We are going to do a fall raptor shoot with Schlitz. WACO will be.
oh,
At
okay.
least we're planning that. But the one that's coming up is the one that Schlitz puts on once or twice a year on
Yeah.
their own.
And I know people have been happy with what they can do there.
Yep. Yeah, so it's a good one. It helps support their birds, their bird things. So I know a number of our people here have gone there for that one.
And then there's the Whitewater Arts Alliance that we've got information in the newsletter for, that there's a photography competition that my understanding is that if you're accepted, that they're actually going to put a framed picture that you provide on gallery show at Whitewater. So if you're interested in that, the information and the links to the rules and everything are in the newsletter. And also in the newsletter, it mentioned nature photography classes spring speaker series, that there are some speakers that you can sign up. I believe it's $27 a piece to see each presentation. Each presentation is about 2 hours long. One of the presentations, there's 7 presentations. One of them was today. And there are some names in there that we've seen.
Jennifer Renwick is next week.
Yeah.
Because I did those, and we had Mike on doing his storm presentation this past Saturday. So I had Mike 2 Saturdays in a row.
Yeah. And also remember that you should be starting to collect some pictures based on leading lines for Jane Hurst will be doing in June a slideshow based on leading lines.
Do you have a specific date, Jane, that you want them by right now?
Oh, I haven't thought that far ahead. You know, middle May, I think.
That's not that far away.
I did receive one person.
If August is close, then yeah, June is closer.
But yeah, I mean, just label them when you send them to me, you know, Menomonee Fall slideshow or something, so that I don't pass it by.
Okay.
2100 by 2100. You can usually send 5 of them at a crack without slowing your computer or my computer down. I don't like to have to go to a Dropbox or anything like that. Just works better if you just attach them to the email.
Okay.
Jane, you
Which
said
most
that-
people do, but some people like to get creative and send them all sorts of technical ways, and I just like it the old-fashioned way.
Jane, you said 2100, the long edge?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Roger?
Yes.
Did you mention the Photoshop Creativity Virtual Summit that's coming up April 17th to 20th?
No, I did not mention that.
Okay, this is it's a full day of different professional photographers talking about different things they do using Photoshop in their photography. It's all Zoom. It's free. If when you sign up, if and you have 24 hours, I think, or 48 hours to go back to watch the presentation. After that, you don't have access to them, but if you pay the premium, then you have them for a long time. You can download them and watch them. So if you want to look that up, it's Photoshop Creativity Virtual Summit. And it's April 17th through 20, Monday through Friday, the whole day, each day. Every hour is a different speaker.
What's that name again, Tony?
Photoshop Creativity Virtual Summit.
by Dave Cross.
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
And I can tell about one other one that's coming up. There's the Hazel Meredith has her virtual creative photography conference June 24th and 25th. There are just a minute, she has junk on her website. 9 speakers, 13 hours of sessions. It's $39 for the early bird, and $49 regular. One of the reasons that I'm promoting it is I'm doing 2 of the sessions, one on long exposure photography and one on the best camera to use shooting in a nature park. But she's got a bunch of other creative stuff. Mindy Guidry doing creative digital painting with the Paint Studio. Mark Hillard, monochrome magic, black and white and infrared post-processing. Carol Ann Judd from Canada, the art of impressionist photography. Jean Molly-Mick, lighting for auto photography. Jeffrey Moore, creative camera phone photography. Todd Nettlehurst on adding pizzazz, Photoshop not required, and close-up and personal, the joys of macro photography. Plus, Hazel has creative floral portraits with textures. So that's also another good one. We had Hazel on not that long ago. And it's a good little conference that she puts together. So for that fee, you also get to watch them for 60 days. So that's another one that's out there.
Okay.
And Jeff, you're still going to be sending the photo for our post-processing, which will be our
Yes.
feature next month.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get that out sometime this week, probably this weekend. I just haven't picked it yet, and I'm still trying to think how I'm going to send it out.
The names I put in the newsletter for on May 2nd, so I don't know if you just want to send them to the people individually or if it's huge or if,
Well,
so.
yeah, the hard part is that the raw file, I want to send the raw file out, and that's, a 40 megabyte file. So I'll maybe send it out by WeTransfer, probably.
That should work.
Okay.
Should work.
I have no idea what that is, but I will find out. Okay.
Yep.
I've got a question on that because I'm one of the volunteers. Are we limited to just one edit or can we do a multiple edits?
You can do multiple edits.
Okay.
Anything you want. I'm always curious to see how people will process whatever image I might put out. I'm trying to decide what type of image to put out right now. So probably something in nature, but I also thought about a racing picture too. So
For a minute there, I thought you were curling your mustache and
but you
say something.
You showed us how to do racing pictures already, didn't you?
Yeah.
Right, you did.
Sometimes I think we need to throw something different in there because we always do nature so often. It'd be nice to see a few other things. So my problem is I haven't shot much lately, so I have to go digging through my Lightroom.
And nobody said that to be a time specific photo that you send us, so you can go back through your archives.
Yeah. We'll see what I come up with.
Okay.
Okay, for digital form is going to be April 22nd, and Drema Swader is going to be doing a presentation on the app called Photo Pills. If you don't know what that is, it relates to being able to predict where the moon or the stars, what position, what angle they're going to be at any time of day for trying to do night pictures. It's actually got quite a few different things in it. I think it's more than just that. But
Yeah, it has a ton of stuff in it.
yeah. And a reminder that if anybody is with the PSA, they're having a outing in Marquette, Michigan at May 19th to 21st. And the only other things that I have on here is I've got the President's Challenge slideshow, which I only got 2 other people submitting pictures, so it's a short slideshow. And if we have time left, I could show a few pictures relating to how I created some bubble pictures outside and in my basement. So first off, I'll start off doing the President's Challenge slideshow on tabletop. And let me okay. And okay, can everybody see this?
Yep.
Okay, since I am already sharing my screen, I'll pull up Lightroom and talk a little bit about some of the bubble pictures that I took this winter. One morning I got up and I was going to go out for a morning walk, and I noticed that it was 14 degrees and perfectly calm. That shocked me. So I went outside and on my planter, I took some of the soap solution that I have. It's standard bubble solution that I fortified with a little extra Dawn and actually quite a bit of glycerin to make the bubbles tougher and hold up longer. And I blew the bubbles and let them sit on the snow. It took a few tries before the bubbles would not pop as I laid them onto the snow. And at first, it didn't look like there was really too much contrast or anything to see. But then they, at 14 degrees, they started to freeze. And I'm going to try and pull up a slideshow here of a bubble freezing. Now this was handheld, so the bubble bounces around a bit, but you can see the ice crystals growing. And there you can see the it kind of shrunk and looked a little bit football shaped because of the lower air volume as it got colder. And here's my flower box, nothing special. And a couple of bubbles sitting up there. They'll stay up there for quite a while after they freeze. And here are a couple of my final pictures that the contrast has been raised up and sharpened a bit. You can see that you can see reflections of the buildings and stuff behind there. So it actually looks better after I let it freeze pretty much all the way. And took some work, some dehaze and stuff to make the lines stand out some more. But that's what I got in the frozen bubbles. Now, I tried to work on doing bubbles in my basement. And here's the setup that I made where I draped a white cloth over some boxes and made a little podium that I could put my bubbles on. And then on top of that, I've got a big studio flash that I put over the top. And so it's basically like a light box. I tried a number of different ways of presenting the bubbles. Here I put in a black piece of foam core so that I could get it black behind the bubble. And I was using a 70 to 200 millimeter lens with extension tubes on it. And you can actually see in the viewfinder how big that bubble looked from where I was sitting at. And I started taking pictures and really couldn't see much. There I got some more color to them. And here there wasn't too much color either. Now here, something to point out is that you can see a dark area at the bottom center. That's where it's the reflection coming back to where my camera is. And the other lines on the side really have to do with the connection between the white of the studio flash and the white cloth I had laid over the boxes. And here I took and used a little plastic cap over from a spray bottle and just put one bubble on that. And here I was using a camera body cap. And that is actually a black piece of foam core behind it. So some of these don't look too impressive as far as colors and everything. I found that no matter what I did, I couldn't really get these textures and things super sharp, even when I did focus stacking or focused on different areas. And the swirls and the bubbles, if you're using regular soap bubble formula, the bubbles don't last quite as long as you'd like, and those swirls are constantly changing and moving. Where when I have this thickened solution, they don't move around quite as fast. And actually, after some point, they become stagnant and just stay there. Here, I used a small makeup mirror to see what would happen with that for a background. And here's a bigger bubble on the same thing. And here I've darkened the background in Photoshop. And here I got a little bit more color to it. And towards the end here, what I did was trying to get more color in the bubbles. I found a piece of paisley fabric, which I stretched over the top of the bubbles and shot the flash through it. Really, for these shots, you don't necessarily have to have a studio flash. You just have to have some white sheet and a light. It could be, if you've got one of those small light boxes, that would work well for this. Probably, maybe even better, because you might not see the seams that I've been seeing on some of my shots. And then I think on these last two, I enhanced the colors a lot. And you can kind of tell that in the top, there's some of that paisley pattern from the fabric that I stretched over the top. And I got one more. And that's just a similar one. Again, with the saturation pumped up like Jeff likes it. So that's all I have. Thought I'd add in that little filler. And so anyone have any questions about that? It was surprising to me that the ones that I did outside really weren't that difficult. I saw it looked nice, so I went and got my bubble solution, blew a couple bubbles on the snow and took some shots, and a couple of them turned out pretty nice.
You're a very patient person.
It's a neat idea.
How much glycerin did you mix in?
I don't know, I didn't measure.
Did you try any food coloring or anything too?
I didn't think of that. There's probably all kinds of things that are yet to be explored. And like I had mentioned when Jeff Dobbs was talking, I had tried to do focus stacking, and with that big strobe, I should be able to do a lot of small power, low power flashes with that. But the camera does not work in that mode with the focus stacking. So what I had to do was I had to take a shot, tweak the focus, take a shot, tweak the focus, take a shot, tweak the focus.
I'm wondering if you had, let's say, a constant light, where it would just stay, fixed.
Yeah, that would do it. Don't have one at the moment.
All these toys and gadgets for the cameras ooh, that can add up real quick.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of nice, useful, equipment. I would like to get maybe even an L bracket, for the camera, turn it 90 degrees, take it off, do a portrait, go from portrait to landscape, and you just have it just right there, just like that.
I've got a bracket that I bought when I was doing a couple of weddings. And it has basically an L bracket with the flash on it, but the base that the camera sits on is a 4-bar linkage. And you can just rotate the camera and nothing else changes. And that really works slick. It's a little bit heavy, but it works slick.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot.
Yeah, that's how a lot of portrait and wedding photographers used to shoot.
Yeah.
Had a bracket and the flash would be off to the side and you could flip the bracket. Either the bracket would flip or the base would flip. Usually you would flip the flash more than anything. But
Yeah, years
the
ago,
old
I got a
days.
group of us to do some portrait photography at the zoo for their zoo ball, and I got the zoo to buy us all the photographers. I think there were 3 or 4 of us. The zoo paid for our L brackets on the flash, and that was quite a few years ago. But I still have it, just haven't used it lately.
Same with mine. So anybody else have anything else that they want to ask about or show?
I have 2 things. Jeff, I think there's a question for you in the Q&A about the Hazel Meredith. What the Hazel Meredith thing was.
Yeah, I didn't look
But
in the Q&A.
inquiring minds want to know, Clint, whatever happened with your camera and your raw pictures?
It's still up to debate. I know I'm still waiting for the Sony rep to get back to me on that. He was supposed to get back to me, but I really do appreciate you, asking about it and that. I have been shooting only JPEG because it seems like I'm getting better quality pictures. It seems like sharper in that. I got a new software last week on one, and it seems like it's still the raw file still is blurry, not as sharp. So Jeff was mentioning from Mike Crivello's, there might be a setting in the camera that it might not be as sharp, for the raw. I don't understand what. So I still got to look into that. So I'm hoping next week and that. So hopefully when we have digital form next month, or wait, this month already, and that I can give everyone an update on that.
No, I won't be there.
Well, you can always watch the YouTube and that.
Or I'll just ask you again.
Or you can ask me again. I got no problem.
Clint, why don't you have you tried just shooting outside on a bright sunny day and seeing how the raw and JPEG compare?
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that. Is I did shoot both and that simultaneously, where you shoot raw and JPEG at the same time. And I did notice there was a difference between the two. And I shot it on a tripod. And I believe it was an ISO 100 because that was that day it was snowing and I shot the bird feeder in that. And what I did notice is, the raw, when I even zoomed in on the camera, it seemed like it was still not as sharp. And that, when I did the JPEG, because when you shoot raw, the back of the camera is supposed to pop up JPEG, a picture. And I don't understand why that's not a nice, sharp quality picture. So I'm scratching my head on that. So I don't know.
How are the raw files looking when you look at them in like Lightroom or Photoshop or something like that?
The only thing I use is on one, and it just seems like it's still not as sharp and that. So like I said, I tried a couple, I even tried a doll in that too. You set up a doll in the corner and I shot, the same, like how you're shooting for the concerts, even at 6400 ISO. It seems like there's more noise that's embedded in the raw file compared to the JPEG. And I don't understand why that's happening. So I don't know.
I still think it might be the type of JPEG that you're embedding in the raw file. And there might be a setting in the camera. Ian, do you know if there's a setting for that?
I'm sorry. Which setting are you looking for, Jeff?
Is there a setting for the type of JPEG file that's set up in the raw file when it takes a raw picture?
Because I shoot with a Sony.
I know. So
I do
does
too. That's why he's asking
Ian.
me.
No, I mean,
I'm right now looking at the settings.
I got my camera here too, and that's. Thank you guys for taking a look at that, and thank you guys for all your input and stuff like that. Like I said, it got frustrating, and that we're on the I was seeing two things: one on the computer, and one actually, there's a part one and a part two. Part one was the computer, but then part two was the camera. And the camera, I was getting blurry picture even when I looked through the viewfinder. So I didn't quite understand why compared to a JPEG file. So it's kind of frustrating on that. I don't know if there's something wrong with the raw file in the camera itself. So, and I was hoping to get, contact Ashley. He said he was going to try and get a hold of me last week. So I'm going to have to try to get a hold of him this week.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any difference in sharpness between the raw and the JPEG.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, I was thinking the same thing, and that's where it gets frustrating.
Can't you change the sharpness on a JPEG? I mean, isn't there different forms of sharpness on
Yes.
sharpness on JPEG?
Correct. I can change, like how the creative mode is, for landscape, standard, and that you can actually adjust a sharpness on that, but when I shoot raw, it seems like it's not as sharp and crisp, especially when I, let's say, do photography, for the bands and that, and I can zoom in on the eye. And for some reason, when I used a raw file, it's not as sharp. When I used a JPEG, it's crystal clear. It's like, wow, not always and that, but it's I have a lot more success, with the JPEG. So that's why I'm thinking that maybe there's a setting I don't have set up correctly, but I don't understand.
Clint, I sent you an email about Ashley's going to be over in Madison doing it's called Bar Portraits Workshop next week or on 27th, whatever.
Yes, I seen it right before, about 10 minutes before I logged in, into our Zoom meeting. So it's like, well, maybe I might not hear from Ashley this week, but thank you for sending me that information.
One other thing to try maybe is within the camera, go back and reset to original factory settings, start over.
I tried that one time. That still didn't seem like it worked, but I can give it a try one more time and do a factory reset and completely wipe it completely out. I think it was Tony was mentioning about maybe updating if there is an update for the firmware and that with this camera.
Yeah, I would always check that. What I would
I was
probably
actually trying to look for that right now. That's what I was searching for.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Out there.
Try shooting something where you got a high enough shutter speed and shooting a newspaper at a high shutter speed, low ISO, and make sure it's focused in sharp.
Okay.
shoot that in RAW and then shoot that in JPEG. That's one of the simplest tests that you can do because newsprint is so fine, and shoot it at about 10 feet away.
Okay, would you suggest shooting one, you know, not shoot at the same time, shoot RAW and JPEG, shoot one RAW?
Or if you could shoot it RAW and JPEG, because then basically it's taking the same shot, and take a look at that and see if one's sharper than the other. And if nothing else, if you want to send me both of those files, I'll analyze the file. I got a couple ways to check it.
Okay, that'd
But
be great.
it's easier if you shoot a piece of newsprint. You need to fill the screen with the newsprint.
Okay, I'll do that.
And you know, fast shutter speed so you don't get any shake. You know, do it on a tripod.
I will definitely do it on a tripod.
You know, make sure it's focused in sharp. I don't care. You could try it at a couple different f-stops maybe, and
Okay.
send me both files, or, you know, a group of files. I'll take a look at them.
Okay.
Maybe I can see settings because I have a way to look into all the different settings that are in there, and maybe we can see what might be going wrong. I still think that it might be a JPEG setting for what JPEG size is being used in the RAW file, but I don't know enough about Sony if there's a place to set that up or not.
I do know I have it on the max where there's not less, you know, there's losslessness, there's compressed, there's medium, small, and large. I have it where, you know, I have it on the max where it doesn't take any, you know, compress it at all. So I want a pure, you know, I guess the most raw file you can get.
Yeah, which camera is it?
It's the A7R5. So it's a 60 megapixel camera.
Let me just.
And there was a problem too in that is the software that I was using Windows, and the Windows version, instead of going into Photoshop or Lightroom, which I do not have, is it produced more. The new, okay, how can I say it? It produced more noise, and also some of the free software that I do have, it's unrecognizable in that. What I think is with the RAW is it didn't decode it right. So it wasn't giving me a true, how can I say, true sharpness, true colors on the RAW file.
Yeah.
And I do know when the Sony did when you first bought it, if you shot with RAW only, you cannot Photoshop it until Lightroom and Photoshop did an update, because it did not recognize the new Sony RAW file
Right.
at all.
Now, you got to remember with a camera with that high of megapixels that you have a lower ISO value that you can shoot with, because they're cramming more megapixels in a smaller spot.
Correct,
than,
and that's
say,
true. That what you were describing too is when the higher megapixel camera, it sounds funny in that I always say it's like a magnifying glass. It actually brings everything up more, that you see more noise.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look here. Image quality, desired.
Was there a question about saving in different JPEG formats?
Different JPEG formats in the RAW file setting.
Yeah, I've got my Sony book open.
Yeah.
And you can open it in extra fine, fine, and standard.
Yes,
Yeah,
I have
and
mine set up on extra fine right now.
Okay, because that's part of it, is if the RAW file isn't using the extra fine for the JPEG, then of course it's going to be softer until a program re-renders the file. Say, on one should be re-rendering it. once you start to do something with it. But it
Yeah,
sort of
I
also
mean-
depends whether On One is up to date on their file formats as well.
Yeah, I
I
just
think, I
don't.
think you're right, Jeff, as far as needing the actual files. Like you want to see that raw file versus a JPEG of the exact same file, just to take out the variables of how is Sony processing that raw file to display it
Yeah.
on the back of the camera.
And you're right, because each manufacturer is different, Canon, Sony, Nikon, they all read it and process it different. And it'd be quite interesting to send that information to Jeff, where he can read and see what the metadata and all that stuff is that's built in my camera. So it'd be interesting if there is, hopefully it's something simple and an easy fix. But it's just
Yeah.
my opinion, it should be sharper in that, so, but I
Well,
thank everyone for their time and help.
Yeah, I can tell you, but the strange part is it's JPEG versus RAW. Is shooting with that high a megapixel camera, it picks up every imperfection of you doing something wrong that can happen. I notice that when I'm shooting racing with my Z7, that's a 45 megapixel. It picks up every little thing that I screw up with. If I shoot with a Z6, it's half the megapixels and there's so much gets hidden, but I also get a better ISO because the sensor is using bigger sights to read the light than on the 7 does. So there's a lot of different moving parts with this, but if you shoot a newspaper at where you can fill the screen with the newspaper on a tripod with a fast shutter speed, make sure it looks sharp, and I'll take a look at them, try different f-stops, although it should be sharp from wide open to f8. So,
Yes. Well, I can do a setup tomorrow on that, and maybe after, I have a boardroom meeting for my EAA, so I could probably email you that on Thursday and that.
Yeah, you may have to try sending it a different way because an email won't take that big a file.
Correct. What I can do is I'll try my on one drive and that, so I can, transfer, big files. So hopefully that works.
Sure.
If
Do
not,
that, or you could send it to me by WeTransfer.
Okay.
WeTransfer.com is a great way to send large files to somebody. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. They've got I gotta say, Sony has a really crappy instruction book, or their help guide. So I can't find anything, and I can't find an index, so.
Well, it might be just operator error, but I can show you a couple JPEG pictures where you can just zoom in. It's like, wow, you can see. Well, this past weekend, like your glasses that you have, I was shooting the person from the side, and you could zoom in, and you could see, and you could read Ray-Ban on the side of his glasses. Like, man, is that good? But I was shooting
Yeah.
only in JPEG.
And you're shooting in full RAW, right? Or are you shooting in RAW, in the full RAW or RAW L?
No, I'm shooting full raw, no L or M or S, and not the compression. So it's a full max resolution, or the full
Okay.
max, uncompressed.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny because I was thinking, like, well, maybe what happened is maybe I was shooting all my my concerts, with the band. It's like, well, maybe I had my setting wrong, for I had it, let's say, only a spot focus instead of continuous focus, and I did double check it was on continuous focus. But I know it is apples and oranges when you're comparing RAW and JPEG, and also with flash and no flash too.
Yeah, well, RAW should give you the slightly better shot, but it needs to be processed.
especially the
So-
uncompressed.
Yeah.
Those files have got to be massive.
Yeah, they are.
The uncompressed ones, especially because I've seen articles about it, and people are like, "Yeah, I still shoot in compressed raw because they're just so big."
It's over 100 meg, and I think up to 130, 140, and that
Because
per
I
picture.
think the compressed is like 60.
Yeah. And that compressed probably would work just fine for most shooting because I think it's a lossless compression. that
Yeah,
they're
I've got
using.
the manual, like you said, from Sony that I just got confused with it. So I bought another book from Rocky Nook on Sony.
Yeah.
And
That's
it
usually
says
what
the
I do
difference.
too.
Excuse me?
Yeah, that's what I usually do too, is buy one of those books.
It's a little closer to readable.
Yeah.
But it talks about the difference between compressed and uncompressed. And the difference is one is 12-bit and the other one's 14-bit, but it doubles the size of the file.
Right.
And it also says, it recommends open it in the Sony imaging software because that's designed for that camera.
Yeah, I never tried that, and maybe that's what I should try.
Yeah.
And I should download it first.
It's kind of hard to do it if you don't have it.
Yeah.
That's true.
I would certainly try that, Clint, because that's one of the first things to try. Because it could be that On One hasn't gotten the raw worked out quite right yet compared to Sony should have. So I would download it and try the raw and see how it looks.
It might work better because like that free software that does recognize the raw file from Sony, it's a little bit better than what's on the Microsoft window in that, but not a lot better. And then even On One is a little bit better too, so there's improvement in that. But my other free software of GIMP, it won't even open up the raw file in that because it's a free software. But it was pretty good on
I'd be tempted to just try switching it over to compressed and see if you have the same problem.
Okay.
Again, just trying to
Narrow.
narrow things down. Exactly. Do you have the
Okay.
exact same problem with compressed? Because that's like a one setting switch. You could just switch it, take the photo, switch back,
Okay, I can give that a try. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it is a lossless compression. So it might just, figure out something
Yeah,
with it.
because
There
if
is a
it's-
I'll also say there is a firmware update. I don't think it'll address any of this.
Okay.
It's mostly because they came out with their new creators app. There is something about improves the operational stability of the camera. It doesn't say what that means. But I just figured I'd give you a heads up. That software I just saw the update. It only came out a couple weeks ago, like 2-3 weeks ago, like 3:30. So gosh, like a week ago. So
Okay.
my point being, I don't know if you want to run out and throw on brand new software on your camera. You might want to, wait for the firmware just to make sure there's coming out on that. I have not updated to it yet. I'll probably wait a little bit, but I'd let you know 2.0 is out there.
Okay, thank you very much for looking that up, and thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got some experimenting to do.
Yeah, you just got to simplify it and take it sort of a step at a time and don't try too many different things. But the simplest is to start with one subject, and a newspaper is the simplest because it has such fine detail in it. And then try the lossless, the LRAW setting and see if that maybe works better. Try the regular RAW format and try JPEG, and
What I
maybe you
do
can see
know,
a difference.
I think when you go to, small, medium, and large, I think that also instead of 60 megapixel camera, 60 megapixels, I think it goes down to 36 or something like that. I think when you go to the smaller smaller.
Well, no, the raw size, the L, M, and S, well, the M and the S does cut down the megapixel size. The L is the full size data. It's just a lossless compression that they use in here. So, and that works when you're shooting full frame. When you shoot in M or S, the pixel number doesn't change for full frame shooting. L can only be used in full frame. M and S can be used in APS size shooting if you wanted to. But it cuts the file size almost in half, which that in itself can help you. But
Yeah, because right now
I can't.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I can't give you any advice on the lossless because the A7 IV only shoots in compressed. There is no lossless.
Yeah, because what I have is right now the raw setting. I'm looking at the camera right now. I have it on uncompressed. Then the one below is, you know, the lossless compress L, and then I got the M, S, and then I got the compress, which is the smallest. But right now I have it on the highest setting. But I'll try that, you know, but L and that, you know, lossless compression, you know, large.
yeah, I would try that partially too, because you're going to burn up hard drive space in no time.
Oh my God, it's
as well. And I don't. You'll have to do test comparisons to see if there's much difference, but I don't think the lossless compressed is gonna make that much difference for you. But you need to figure out why raw is not. I would also try Sony's program just to see if that's the whole problem, is that maybe on one just isn't caught up, and
That could be right.
doesn't have isn't processing the raw file right.
Yes.
Although it could just be that you need to sharpen the raw file more. But from what you showed us at the last meeting, it looked more like movement to me than anything. So.
Well, that's why I checked to see if I had it on, you know, regular, if it's just a single shot or if it's on continuous shot.
Yeah.
Like, well, maybe these people were moving and then they were all in that. But when I did check the camera, when I changed it back, it said it was in there, but you know, that it was on continuous autofocus. So there's a lot of features. You gotta, boy, some of these new cameras out here, boy, you can change every single thing.
Oh, yeah. When I get a brand new camera that has all sorts of new stuff, I'm testing it for a month solid, and that's every day shooting and running tests in a studio where everything doesn't change, to know exactly what that camera's going to do and where the best settings are and all that. Because trying to do it out in the field when things are changing, it gets too hard.
Oh yeah, I was like thrown right in the fire in that, you know, like, here you go, got a new camera 2 days later.
Yeah, no, and that's, I don't generally do that. I'll shoot an older camera first, then I know how it works before I would shoot a new camera in something that's important. Because
this past weekend, I was actually quite surprised. You know, a good portion of my pictures were really nice and sharp. But like I said, the one guy, man, he was at least more than 10, maybe 15 feet away, and I was shooting him on the side, and you could read Ray-Ban sunglasses on the side of his glasses. Ray-Ban, I mean. It's like, man, that was pretty impressive. And you know, and I think it was only 1/60th at a shutter speed, so he was kind of moving. So I was actually surprised how sharp it was.
Yeah.
Jeff,
I thank you guys.
Jeff had mentioned something about it looked like there was movement. Have you also tried it with the image stabilization turned off?
Correct. And then I also tried a couple times too, and that I even got my monopod out a couple times too, and I didn't notice any difference between that. But those are good examples. Maybe there could be something wrong in that. So it's nice to brainstorm these ideas. So it's like, well, what could I be doing wrong? You know, and it's funny because I told my one friend, Jim, is like, I was so mad this past weekend. I was thinking about bringing up my tripod and setting it up in the dance floor, which I could have been because Friday night and Saturday it was pretty dead, so nobody would have been able to kick it and that. And then I was gonna say, well, then people would be complaining. It's like, well, you probably kicked the tripod or someone bumped into it. Well, then I was gonna tell the people, it's like, well, I was gonna fill up the bar with 5 feet of concrete and that, so it couldn't move and that.
Yeah.
But the bartender wouldn't want that. So, but I tried to do everything, and brainstorm like what could I be doing wrong? So maybe there's something wrong with the camera, with the raw, or maybe it's just a setting. So I gotta,
Yeah.
no,
you just got to take it sort of one step at a time and try to eliminate one thing after another and not try to do too many things at once. And
correct.
maybe you
Maybe
can
what
figure it out.
Maybe what I should try to do is what Brian was saying is just do a factory hard reset of completely wiping everything out and starting from scratch, maybe.
Yeah, it might not hurt to do that.
So, but I got some investigating to do in that, but I
Yeah.
thank everyone for their time and help in that. And I was kind of hoping to hear from Ashley, but it sounds like Ashley's pretty busy. That he's ready to go down Madison. He's from the Minneapolis area and that. So the Sony
Yeah.
rep.
Yeah, it's hard to talk to the reps. But yeah, they'll get back to you sooner or later usually.
So, but thank you for, all your input and suggestions and that,
Sure.
like I said, it was a little frustrating, like I said, there's two parts, part one was on the computer and then part two was in the camera. Well, like when I did the JPEG this weekend, I could zoom in on the one guy's glasses and it said Ray-Ban and the one guy's like, I can't believe that. That's like a money shot. It's like, yeah, it's unbelievable. But when I shoot it in RAW, it's like I just can't get that. So I don't know, and I don't understand that. So I don't know.
I can't tell you. It shouldn't be that way.
Yeah. I mean, you should think,
So-
when you zoom in, yeah, maybe let's say the RAW, granted the RAW is, not Photoshopped edit or whatever. Yeah, it might be slightly off, but I don't think really significantly. You should still be able to zoom in and tell. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
thank you. All right. Well, I guess it's almost 9:30 and at 9:23. I thank everyone for staying later and, helping me out and brainstorming.
Okay, well, I think we can call the meeting to a close.
Okay.
Thank
Sounds
you,
good to me.
everyone.
Yep,
Have a good night.
Thanks.
good night, everyone.